This video is sponsored by Classic Football Shirts, the best place to get your classic and vintage football shirts. To get cheap retro Palace shirts, click the link in the description below. Hello and welcome to the Equals Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook, and in today's podcast I'll be looking over the result against Liverpool by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you an exclusive interview with Frank de Boer, Timothy Fosu-Mensah and Jason Puncheon after the game. So let's begin. Sadio Mane was the bane of Palace again as he netted the only goal of the game to hand Liverpool a slender victory against the Eagles at Anfield. The Senegalese attacker capitalised on a mistake in the defence to score the game's only goal with 17 minutes to play, registering his fourth goal in 6 Premier League outings against Red and Blue, who were still waiting for their first points of the campaign. However, Frank de Boer would be pleased with his side's efforts, who battled valiantly to keep Liverpool at bay, and had a huge chance of their own to take the lead before Mane popped up with the all-important opener. Much had been made of the Reds' weaknesses at set pieces in the build-up to this encounter, and after 8 minutes the Eagles had their first opportunity to put them under pressure, when Jason Puncheon whipped a free kick into the area and James Tonkins met it with his head. However, the ball flashed over the top of the bar. That woke the hosts out of their early slumber, and James Milner curled a shot straight at Wayne Hennessy before the Welshman received a huge let-off when he came to deal with a cross from debutant Andy Robertson but missed. However, Joe Gomez got his header all wrong and sent the golden chance wide of the mark. Following that scare, de Boer's team settled and the game became an even affair, and that was shown in a breathtaking passage of play 5 minutes before the break when either side could have taken the lead. It began when Roberto Firmino hammered a blast goalwards from 25 yards out, which Hennessy managed to beat away, and then a good interception by Timothy Fosu-Mensah created a counter-attack involving Andros Townsend and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. The latter fed the unmarked Puncheon inside the box, but the captain saw his first-time drive swatted away by Simon Mignolet. That was the highlight of the good opening 45 minutes for Palace, and they had to weather another Liverpool storm early in the second half when Milner bent a free kick into the Klopp, and then Hennessy managed to scramble down to his bottom corner to claw away a Georgie Wijnaldum attempt, but the Eagles continued to show their threat by carving out at the best opportunity a minute later. Fosu-Mensah played a long ball over the top to the impressive Loftus-Cheek to chase, and he galloped to the byline to cut the ball back perfectly for Christian Benteke 7 yards out. But he couldn't haunt his former side for the second season in a row as he blazed it over the bar and a massive opportunity went begging. The match was becoming a much less cagey affair, and Hennessy had to make a similar low save to prevent Jordan Henderson from opening the scoring. And then the visitors survived a goal-mouth scramble which ended with Mane shooting straight at a Palace stopper. However, the pressure finally told on 73 minutes. Mane collected the ball on the left and found Robertson, who attempted the 1-2, but it was intercepted by Luka Milivojevic. Trying to get the ball under control, the Serbian could only stumble into a 50-50 challenge with Solanke, and the Reds got the luck of the bounce, allowing Mane to slide the loose ball past Hennessy. Jurgen Klopp's team had plenty of chances to double their lead late on, including a Mo Salah header and a Solanke low effort which was saved by Hennessy. And then the keeper made two of the best stops of the afternoon, when he dived full stretch to push away attempts by Robertson and Salah again. But his fine display was in vain as Liverpool claimed the narrow victory. Much improved but same result. If Crystal Palace had not got off to a losing start against Huddersfield Town last weekend, everyone would be very positive right now. And to a certain extent the fans were in positive frame of mind this week. After all, it was a decent performance against Liverpool. And while the Eagles do have a very decent record at Anfield, it's never an easy place to go and win. But what do we learn from Saturday's game? Here are 5 things. Number 1. Wayne Hennessy was immense. He has his critics, although, and I could name a number of Palace players in the squad that have their critics, but you have to give credit where it was due and say that without Wayne Hennessy, Palace could have lost heavily on Merseyside. The goalkeeper made 4 or 5 top quality saves and was extremely unlucky to be on the losing side. Frank de Boer may be after another keeper, but we're yet to find out whether that's a new number 1 or backup. More performances like that and Hennessy will not have any competition. Number 2, Ruben Loftus-Cheek was also immense. Why Chelsea let this boy go out on loan is beyond me. But Chelsea's loss is very much Crystal Palace's game, at least at this moment in time. The midfield man was everywhere. Not only does he go looking for the ball from his defence, he is a driving force in that Palace midfield. The future is bright for this one. Number 3, Crystal Palace need more going forward. Christian Benteke was too often isolated up top. Andros Townsend didn't offer enough of a threat, either in driving down the wing or supporting the big front man. Ruben Loftus-Cheek was supposed to be playing in the front three, but I think we can forgive him for not playing much there, given his impressive display on the rest of the field. So when Townsend is your only other attacking outlet and he's not in the game, Palace don't have a lot else. Of course they miss Wilfried Zaha, but who wouldn't? But De Boer needs to look more in the transfer window before the window closes. Oliver Burke, anyone? Number 4, the 3-4-3 formation can work. Frank de Boer has a system he wants to play, and so far he's admitted he's not prepared to budge on that formation. Why should he? It's only been 2 games. But it's a bone of contention with fans and pundits alike. Can the formation work? Is there a plan B if it doesn't? Frank de Boer has had to endure questions about the formation pretty much since he's been playing it. It didn't work against Huddersfield, but that was its first outing in a competitive match. It certainly worked a lot better at Anfield, and as time goes on against, shall we say, easier opponents, they will have some joy. And number 5, Premier League experience. Jaro Riedwald was injured on Saturday, and that could have been the best thing for Palace. It's one thing bringing a new formation to a team you have joined, it's another bringing a new player to the league and asking them to hit the ground running too with it. So Riedwald has played under De Boer before, he knows the system he wants to play, but he doesn't know his teammates that well, or the league. Timothy Fosu-Mensah, Scott Dann and James Tompkins know the league, but not necessarily the system. Which is easier to adapt to? If Saturday is anything to go by, the formation. That could mean that Riedwald has to wait for his chance, or De Boer could just bring him straight back in and persist. Now I'm going to move on to the player ratings, but before I do that, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at @eCrystalPalace for the place to get all the latest Palace news. And also, if you are on Facebook, do feel free to join our Facebook group, which you can find using the link in the description below. And that's also a great place if you want to join in with discussions with other fans, and also if you want to share your opinion, share any photos from the game that you want other fans to see. Now obviously another good place to share your opinion is in the YouTube comments, so if you are listening to the podcast on YouTube, then do feel free to drop a comment below the video with your player ratings, rating the player's performance from 1 to 10, obviously based on how well you thought they performed, along with your views from the game. And this is just our reason I want you to do that is obviously so you can share your opinion, so myself, so that other fans who click on the video can actually see your opinion and how you thought the game went, because it's alright people listening to my opinion, but maybe other fans maybe have a different opinion to me, so obviously do feel free to drop a comment below the video there. But the final thing really from me before we go on to start with the player ratings is obviously if you do want to find any of these social media pages or groups, then do check all the links in the description below. But enough of that, now to move on to my player ratings, starting in goal with Wayne Hennessy, who I'm going to give an 8. Had one of his better games. Was let off the hook by Matip after completely missing a cross for only the Liverpool man to nod wide, but pulled a great save back at the end of the half from Firmino. Got down well to stop Wijnaldum's drive when he came through a crowd, and then to deny Henderson from a distance a few moments later. Couldn't do anything about Mane's goal, and then did brilliantly to clash away a Salah's shot. So obviously Wayne Hennessy here, I've given him an 8, and considering last weekend the whole team sort of had a really bad, disorganised performance, in this game Wayne Hennessy, you would think he wouldn't have a lot of confidence considering we lost 3-0, but in this game he came into the game all guns blazing and probably had one of his best games we've seen certainly in the last sort of 6 months. Yes, it was probably on par with the ones against Chelsea and Arsenal last season, but he probably had one of his best games in a while, and that's why I've given him an 8. But just to talk about his performance as a whole, obviously we did lose 1-0, but I don't think we can really blame Hennessy for that, because the one goal we did concede from Mane, it deflected in the box off a few Palace players, and Mane was lucky to manage just to get a slight foot on it to put it past Hennessy. So we can't really blame Hennessy for the goals conceded, because I'm just going to go through some of the stuff here that he did do well. You know, at the end of the first half, lovely save from Firmino. Firmino running through on goal, one of Liverpool's biggest threats, and Wayne Hennessy, you know, pulled off a great save. Then in the second half, he continued with that great form. You know, Wijnaldum had a drive, came through all of the players in the box and he was able to make a save. Jordan Henderson as well had a shot in the box and he was able to, Wayne Hennessy, considering how tall he is, get down low and deflect it out. There was a few other saves in the end, towards the end of the game. Robertson, for example, whipped one from just outside the box. Hennessy was able to tip that over the bar. So all in all, first half, second half, Wayne Hennessy had a really good performance, and like I said, you can't really blame him for the goal. But the thing really we need to criticise him for, and this is something that keeps popping up, is his sort of indecision. And in the first half, we could have gone 1-0 down within the sort of first few minutes, because Wayne Hennessy, he went to punch a cross away, or he went to claim the cross, but he then decided to leave it for whatever reason. Then Matip was able to have a clear header, and luckily for us, he headed it wide. But the point is, Hennessy, being as tall as he is, being over 6 foot, he should easily be claiming that ball. But I'm not really going to criticise him too much for it, because as a whole, overall in the game, he had a really decent performance. But like I said, couldn't really do anything about the goal. And you know, the shots as well, one I forgot to mention, Salah as well. When Salah came off the bench, he was fresh, added pace to the Liverpool attack. He had a few shots and Hennessy was able to save them as well. So if you look at the game as a whole, there were sort of 4, maybe 5 really, I'm not going to say world class saves, but they were really top class saves for Wayne Hennessy, and they kept us in the game. And then unluckily for us, one mistake from Luca, I believe it was, let the ball to deflect in the box, and then Mane was able to get on the end of it. But really, other than that, I think it was a really good performance. Maybe we could highlight the fact that there was a really bad clearance in the first half. So Ward obviously isn't playing fantastically in this new system. He passed the ball back to Hennessy, and Hennessy made a dog's dinner of the clearance. It was quite awful. But other than that, and other than that sort of the cross where he didn't claim it and Matip headed wide, other than that, it was a really excellent performance. And you know, these number of saves, these saves he kept making, kept Palace in the game. So we talk about players who have an influence on the game, and normally maybe the striker or maybe it's a midfielder. In this game it was Hennessy with the impact, because he's the one who ultimately kept it at 1-0 rather than it being maybe 4, maybe 5-0. But the final thing really to talk about is, obviously I've given him an 8 out of 10. But according to WhoScored.com stats, he actually got a 9 rating, and this is just sort of things such as crosses, free goal kicks, saves. All these things, stats are put together and it generates a number, and Wayne Hennessy got a 9 rating, which actually makes him the highest rated goalkeeper for this weekend. So he actually got into the Premier League Team of the Week based on WhoScored.com stats. So that's just a credit to how well he performed. You know, we may have lost the game, and this happened quite a lot last season. We may have lost the game, but still players are getting in the Team of the Week because their performances are much better than the whole teams. And I've said this in the 5 things we've learned. He was really unlucky to be on the losing side, because really Mignolet didn't really have to do much in the game. So if Hennessy made these saves and was on the winning side, you could probably say he was the man of the match, because I think it was a really good performance from him. But Wayne Hennessy, I've given him an 8. The thing really to describe his performance is obviously it's probably one of his better games in a while. Obviously moving on now to the right centre back, and that is Tim Fosu-Mensah, who I am going to give a 7. Played at the right back of the back 3 again, and had put in a disciplined first half, keeping his shape and getting well in to nick the ball away a few times. Did well to nick the ball away from Firmino in a dangerous position in the second half. So obviously Fosu-Mensah here, come on loan from Man United against Huddersfield. He was probably one of the players who came away with the least blame, because he had a alright performance, and I believe I gave him a 6 or a 7. And in this game I've given him a 7, because once again it was a really solid performance, and considering he's only 19-20, he almost looks like he's been playing in the Premier League for years, and he's played a few times for Man United, but he hasn't played enough to get that experience. And in this game, playing at the right of the back 3, he played absolutely superbly. So obviously we did go on to lose the game, but Fosu-Mensah, there was nothing really he could have done about the goal, because like I said, the ball was sort of deflecting in and around the box, and Mane was just managed to get a toe on it to hit it in and score. But Fosu-Mensah, a really disciplined first half, much like Hennessy. You know, he'd done what he had to do in the first half. Very disciplined performance from Fosu-Mensah. He stayed strong at the back, made sure his positional awareness was better than it was last week, and certainly that helped us to be really solid and at the back, so obviously stopping Liverpool's attacks. And then also, you know, keeping his shape. I said this already, you know, against Huddersfield we had no organisation, players were all over the place. The back 3 was maybe too wide at times and sometimes too narrow, and so obviously that's why we lost the game against Huddersfield. But in this game, obviously where they've had a week to work on it, Fosu-Mensah, Dan and Tompkins, they kept their shape really well. They were very disciplined, and obviously towards the end of the first half, when Liverpool started to put on pressure and we put on pressure as well. Fosu-Mensah, lovely tackle, a few lovely tackles to obviously nick the ball away, and that was on a few occasions where maybe Liverpool got, they got slipped in through our midfield, but luckily Fosu-Mensah was there to make a tackle, and he carried on that form into the second half. Firmino is the prime example, running through on goal. Fosu-Mensah made an absolutely superb tackle to get the ball away, and that was in a really dangerous position. Normally you may see players, especially last season, you would see sort of like headless chickens. They don't know what to do, there's a player running at them and they don't know what to do in the box. But Fosu-Mensah, I saw he was running at him, done really well to nick the ball from him, flick it away, and obviously ultimately kept the score at 0-0 at that point. And obviously we did go on to concede one goal, but Fosu-Mensah not at all was at fault for it, and that's why I've given him the 7. But the thing really I want to talk about is the thing you could say about him is that you hardly noticed him, and that's not a bad thing or a good thing. The fact that we didn't notice him shows that he's doing his job. If you notice him, it's that the fact that he's done something really, really fantastic, like a last-ditch tackle save, which he done last week but not this week. But also, if he'd done something really bad, you would notice him, and the fact that we didn't notice him just shows that how good his performance was. The fact that he was just doing his job, he was doing what a defender had to do. Nothing fantastic, but nothing bad. And because he was not always troubled in the game, because our midfield was quite packed and quite solid together, maybe he didn't get troubled that often apart from the goal. But overall, Fosu-Mensah on loan from Man United, this is turning out to be a really, really good loan signing, and it's only been 2 games, so we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. But based on the performances, the discipline he's been showing and the shape he's been showing in these games, Fosu-Mensah is looking like a really solid signing. Obviously moving on now to the central defender Scott Dann, who I'm going to give an 8. Much better than last week from the Palace number 6, who was in the right place more than often to steal the ball away from the Liverpool strikers. Pulled out a few brilliant sliding blocks in the box to cut out square balls. Pushed up front in the search for a late equaliser from the final 10 minutes of the game. So see, Scott Dann here, I've given him an 8, and it was a much better performance than it was against Huddersfield. And if you listen back to the Huddersfield podcast, you'll hear that I actually said that, yeah, he was probably one of the players at most to blame for the goals we conceded against Huddersfield. And in this game, as you can see by I've given him an 8, he wasn't at fault at all for the goals, and it was much better. In this game, much like Fosu-Mensah, his positioning was right, he was always in the right place. And also, if you're in the right place and you're good at tackling, which Danny is, we've seen it, it means that you're in the right place to make tackles. And we saw that in the first half, especially, Liverpool going on the attacks, the strikers especially, sort of like Sturridge and Firmino. These strikers were running through on goal, and because Scott Dann, unlike last week, was in the right place at the right time, he was able to make that last ditch tackle to steal the ball away and stop the attacks. And that's the thing that they obviously have worked on in training, the fact that they've worked on their positional awareness, because in this game all the players knew where they had to be on the pitch. So when you're put under pressure of a counter-attack from a really powerful, really fast team like Liverpool, if you're in the right place and you know what your role is, you're able to make tackles. And in this game, obviously Scott Dann did that really well. And obviously towards the end of the game, there was a few brilliant sliding blocks throughout the game, where the ball was getting crossed in from out wide because someone like Joe Ward let a defender or let a winger run past him. When they whipped the ball in, obviously Scott Dann was in the right place to put in some lovely sliding blocks to obviously cut the ball out, maybe for a corner, maybe for a throw-in. So that the fact that he's getting down low and stopping the opportunities, unlike last week where we didn't even attack crosses that were coming into the box. Against Liverpool, we attacked every ball that came into the box, whether it be low or high, and obviously Scott Dann was one of the main people doing that. And then I've heard a lot of people talk about this on different podcasts. The fact that Scott Dann played up front, was that tactical genius from Frank de Boer saying, okay, let's go 4-4-2, let's actually try and get something from the game? Or was it just sort of a plea to Steve Parish and the board saying, we need another striker because Ladapo is young, he's still not good enough, Keshi Anderson isn't good enough? Was it a plea? And that's the, they discussed it on all these other podcasts, and my opinion on it is I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. It is quite clever because that's what Pardew used to do last season, because they know that Scott Dann, he's a really powerful, really good header of the ball. So if you put him up front with Benteke, if you get crosses in from the wings to Scott Dann, he'll score them, and we saw that last year against Bournemouth at the beginning of the season. So we know that he's got that ability, but then it's really a plea to the board, because if you had a striker on the bench, like someone like Meunier from Barcelona we've been linked with, someone like Oliver Burke we've been linked with, if you had someone like him on the bench to bring on. Maybe you wouldn't have to have Scott Dann playing a striker, and I think it's a bit of both really. It's tactical genius because it's showing that Frank de Boer's trying to do something different and he knows the aerial ability that Scott Dann's got, but also it's sort of a plea to the board because he's saying that we haven't actually got enough quality strikers to go up front, so I have to put a defender there. But I'm not going to criticise him because them sort of 10 minutes where he was playing up front, he put himself out a bit, but I think Liverpool brought on another defender, went really defensive just to hold out for the 1-0 win, and ultimately they did that. But the word really I used to explain his performance, other than the fact that I gave him an 8, is excellent, because he done everything you wanted a central defender to do. You know, we've got top opposition we're playing against as Liverpool, so you want your defender to be really well. You know, Scott Dann done exactly that. He made interceptions, he made blocks, he put in headers to stop crosses coming in. So everything you would expect a central defender to do, Scott Dann did, and that was the complete opposite to what he'd done against Huddersfield. And against Huddersfield, I think I gave him a 5 or a 6. In this game, I've given him an 8, which shows that if you get the things right and you know the organisation, if you have that organisation there, then you can have even better performances. And you know, talking about the Huddersfield game again, I'll keep referring to it, but we looked, obviously the whole team looked much better and more comfortable, but Scott Dann especially, he looked more comfortable on the ball than he did against Huddersfield. And even, you know, when he was playing up front, he didn't look that much out of place. Yes, he's not really that big striker who you want to play up front, but he didn't look somewhat out of place because he was trying to get something from the game. But overall, Scott Dann playing as the central defender, I've given him an 8, a really good performance. Obviously moving on now to the final centre-back, and that is James Tomkins, who I'm going to give a 7. Played in the place of the injured Jaro Riedewald. Tomkins didn't have a lot to do, but worked really well with Dan and Timothy Fosu-Mensah in the back three. Certainly looked a lot more solid than Jario last week. So obviously James Tomkins here, I've given him a 7, and much like Timothy Fosu-Mensah, he had a really solid performance. But before I go on to talk about his performance, I'll talk about the fact that Jaro Riedewald went off injured. He didn't actually start the games because he apparently picked up an injury before the game in training. So obviously Tomkins came in, and he's came into the side. He's never really played that much with a back three, but he didn't really look out of place from when Riedewald came out. And you know, he didn't really have that much to do because the whole team was more organised. You know, the midfield were doing quite a lot of defensive work. Because the whole team was more organised, the defence weren't put under so much pressure. So Tomkins didn't really have that much to do, but he actually formed a really good partnership with Dan and Timothy Fosu-Mensah in that back three. And maybe that's because Riedewald has no Premier League experience, whereas Tomkins does, so Tomkins can play much better, or whether it's just because James Tomkins was trying to prove a point to De Boer, saying, well, actually, Riedewald, yeah, he's still new to this league, he may not be good enough, play me there. And certainly, if that's what he was trying to do, if that's the sort of message he was trying to get to De Boer, then certainly it was the right thing, because much like Dan, he was putting in blocks everywhere, putting in tackles, and really was really solid. And like I said with Fosu-Mensah, you can't really blame him for the goal, and that's why I've given him a 7, because it was a really solid performance. And talking about Jaro Riedewald, he was definitely more solid than him, and I've had a lot of discussions with people on Twitter about whether they think Riedewald should play in midfield. And certainly, if we play Riedewald in midfield, say drop someone like Punchin and play Riedewald there and play Tomkins at the back, I won't actually be that disappointed, because Tomkins is a really good defender and Riedewald has the ability to play in midfield. So if we did do that with the team, I think it will work a lot more better, because Riedewald hasn't got that Premier League experience yet, whereas Tomkins has. And it showed in this game that even though Tomkins normally plays in the back four, playing as a centre-back, if you play him at left centre-back in a back three, he can actually put in a really solid performance. And considering he didn't really play as much as he would have liked in pre-season, it's certainly, considering it's his first start of the season, he slotted in well into the formation, and sort of, it was quite apparent really that he actually fitted into that formation. So that begs the question, you know, we're playing Ipswich today, the day I'm recording, whether Tomkins will play. If Tomkins plays, maybe he may play on Saturday. But certainly, if he puts in performances like this every week, where he's not necessarily fantastic, but he does a job and he does what he needs to do well, then certainly Riedewald won't get anywhere near the team. But James Tomkins, I've given him a 7, a really good game from him. Now let's move on to the right wing back Joe Ward, who I'm going to give a 6. Struggled again at right wing back, as Robertson and Mane managed to get past him time and time again to cross. Grew into the second half though. So see, Joe Ward here, I've given him a 6, and considering how bad he played against Huddersfield, as the saying goes, you could only go up. And in this game, it certainly was a slightly more improved performance than the game against Huddersfield. But certainly we did see in this game that he's not a right wing back, and that's the problem we saw throughout this game. And that's the position, really, the right wing back role that we need to address in the transfer window. But to talk about Joe Ward's performance, once again, like I said, he struggled at the right wing back role, and the main reason for that was not necessarily his positioning like he was against Huddersfield. It was more his pace, the fact that the likes of Robertson and Mane, they kept running down that left flank, running past Joe Ward, and they kept putting in crosses. And if you look back at the game, I talked about Wayne Hennessy missing a cross. That cross came in because Joe Ward was just standing static and let Mane and Robertson get past him. So if Joe Ward had been a little bit less static and actually tried to track his man, and if he had been slightly faster, maybe he would have been able to get to them crosses and stop them coming in. And luckily for us, none of their crosses from the wings came to anything. But the fact that we let so many crosses in from that left hand side or that right hand side, it just shows, really highlights that we need a new right wing back, or play Townsend there, because Joe Ward isn't really up to the role. And yes, he grew into the game in the second half and he tried to put crosses into the box, and if you look back at the stats, I think he attempted the most crosses I think the most crosses out of any Palace player during the game. So that's a good sign that offensively he's trying to create, but overall I think his performance as a right wing back wasn't really good enough. And we talk about the right wing back role, and if you look back at someone like Victor Moses last season, he's not necessarily always been a right wing back. He's played normally as a right winger, but you know, with Chelsea last season he played as that right wing back role, and obviously he got the sort of distribution right. He had the pace, he had the awareness to be able to go defensive and offensive, and that's what Joe Ward doesn't have. And the main thing he doesn't have, he may have defensive awareness, he may have the ability to cross a ball, maybe not as well as he used to, but it's his pace. You know, we've got someone like Townsend who's shown he can play this role, is maybe twice as fast as Joe Ward. Surely it'd be better to have someone like that there, because when you're faced with an opposition with players like Mane and Robertson, you need someone fast, because Mane's just going to rip you apart. So in that aspect, I think, you know, Andros Townsend would have been better playing there, mainly because Joe Ward isn't fast enough, and that's why I've given him a 6. That's why I gave him a 5 last week. It's purely because he's not good enough. You know, he's been a great servant to the club. He used to be a really, really good right back, and we were calling for him to play for England. But in the last few years, he's been getting slightly slower. His defensive awareness has gone down slightly. So I think instead of just putting him in the team just because we haven't got someone there who's primarily a right wing back, maybe play someone like Townsend there, because he showed in pre-season that he can play a lot better there in that role than say Joe Ward can. But you know, the thing really to talk about is he is a clear problem at the moment. The weak link in the team is the right wing back role, and if you look in the media, we're not really getting linked with players who are going to play in that role. We're linked with centre backs, midfielders and strikers / wingers. So maybe if we get another winger who can be sort of not only a backup to Zaha and Townsend, maybe he will play alongside someone like Zaha and Benteke, and maybe that will free up Townsend to move back into the right wing back role. So I don't know what will happen, but my personal opinion is, because there isn't really any traditional right wing back players out there in the market at the minute, get maybe another a winger like, say, the guy from Leipzig, Oliver Burke. Maybe get someone like him to play on the wing, and then move Townsend back here, because it's quite clear at the moment that Joe Ward is the weak link in the team. And it just shows that in this new role, yes, he wasn't fantastic at right back last season, but he done a job there. But showing in this season, he struggles to play in the back four at the end of last season. This season, he's really struggling to play as a right wing back role, because like I said, he hasn't got the pace, he hasn't really got the crossing ability like he used to, so he's really struggling in that role. But hopefully, like I said, in the transfer window, we get in either a right wing back, or we get maybe another winger, and then we can move the team around. But certainly, yes, he was a weak link in the team for the game against Liverpool, but certainly a much more improved performance. Obviously, moving on now to the midfielder Luka Milivojevic, who I'm going to give a 7. Back to his best after a wobbly half last weekend against Huddersfield. Numerous well-timed tackles to win the ball back and some crunching challenges. Headed over early on. Undid a lot of his good work by giving the ball to Mane for the opening goal. He was replaced by Salu Kaikai late on. So obviously Luka here, you know, he got taken off at half-time last weekend, and I talked about how he was quite influential in that game. And yes, he may not have been as good in that game than he was in last season, because I think because he was playing at centre back, he was still adjusting to moving back to the midfield. But in this game, obviously they've had another week's training, and he put in a really, really solid performance. And considering he had a really wobbly start to the season and he didn't really play as well as he would have liked against Huddersfield, in this game he was absolutely superb, and that's why I've given him a 7. Now, just to talk about his performance, much like Scott Dan and Tompkins, the sort of players who, the things that they improved on were tackling and things like that. Milivojevic in the midfield, with us playing quite tight and quite solid, we obviously had to have players putting in tackles all over the field, whether it be a striker, whether it be a defensive midfielder. And obviously in this game, Luka put in numerous well-timed tackles to win the ball back, so he's not only just tackling to stop an attack, he's winning the tackle, getting up and sort of trying to win the ball back and get possession back. And also there's some crunching challenges, so much like Fosu Mensah with last ditch tackles. You know, Milivojevic, when the ball's coming in the area, he'll make a crunching tackle, he'll make sure he makes Liverpool see that he's got that physical presence. He wants a challenge, and obviously he saw the challenges coming in and he put in these lovely tackles. And you know, early on in the half, you know, I talked about Tompkins heading over from a Jason punching free kick in the match report. Luka also had a chance to, you know, score, but obviously in this game he headed over. So obviously in the first half, beginning of the second half, he had a really solid performance, like I said, putting in tackles, putting in these challenges. But in the second half he sort of undid quite a lot of that work, and that's obviously because the ball came in from Robertson. They tried to do a 1-2 as Milivojevic has gone to control the ball. Solanke's came in from behind him, a 50-50 challenge, so it's not a free kick, but he's come in from behind, flicked the ball up, it's deflected off a few players, and then Mane was able to flick it in, toe poke it into the goal. So really, we could blame Luka for the goal, but if you look back at the replays, when you first look at it, you think it's Luka's fault, but then when you watch it again, he's obviously gone to try and control the ball. As he's done that, Solanke's came in from behind him, and obviously the ball's just bumbled in the box and found its way to Mane. So I don't think we can blame Milivojevic that much for the goal, because, like I said, there were two other players in front of him where the ball deflected off of them. So if anything, it was a really unlucky goal to concede. And obviously, because of that, and because he weren't having as much influence in the second half as he did in the first half, he obviously got replaced by Solly Kaikai. And obviously, we've all been calling for Solly Kaikai to play, and certainly Kaikai came on and did make a difference. But just to talk about his performance as a whole before I move on to the next midfielder, you know, he broke up the play really well in the front of the defence. Like I said, you know, like he done last season, he was putting in these crunching challenges to break up the play, and obviously to give protection to the back four, and generally went about his business in an effective way. So everything he done, whether it be passing, whether it be the tackling, whether it be keeping possession, everything he done was really effective. And like I said, talking about the goal, it initially looked like that it was his error that led to the goal, but if you look back at the replays, it suggests it's quite hard really to blame it on him, because it bounced off one player's, then it came off a few other players, then it kindly fell obviously for Mane to score. But like I've said, much like Joe Ward for an example, much like Scott Dan, it was much improved performance from the game against Huddersfield. So hopefully, if he plays against Ipswich or maybe against Swansea, hopefully he can go on again and improve even further and have an even bigger influence on the game. But like I said, a 7 for Luka, a fair result. Obviously, moving on now to the captain, Jason Puncheon, who I'm going to give a 6. Swung in a decent free kick that Luka headed over and looked to be playing 10 yards further up the field than last week. Had a great chance right at the end of the half that Mignolet saved well. Taken off for MacArthur just after Mane's goal. So obviously Jason Puncheon here, I've given him a 6. So much like the other players, it was a much more improved performance than the game against Huddersfield. But like I just discussed with Luka, Jason Puncheon was, beginning of the first half, was creating chances for Tompkins and for Luka, and certainly one of the things he done, it was a really decent free kick. He got a lovely whip on it, lovely curl on it, and obviously Luka just about managed to get his head on it, and obviously unluckily for us went over. And the thing that was quite different to last week, because Luka was playing quite deep, it meant that Puncheon could play maybe 10 yards further forward, so it looked like he was playing in a slightly more advanced role, not being an attacker but being sort of an attacking centre mid, and certainly that did improve his game. And that's the thing that was different from last week, not only the way he played but his positions, and obviously that's something they've worked on in training, because if you listen to people who went to the open training session at Sellers Park, they said that Jason Puncheon was doing an alright job. Yes, he was pointing everywhere and telling people where to go, but he was doing an alright job in the midfield, and we saw that in this game, that actually the training has paid off. But You know, obviously he was creating chances for Luka. Towards the end of the first half, he had a really good chance. Lovely counter-attack. The ball from Fosu-Mensah to Loftus-Cheek, back to Townsend, back to Loftus-Cheek, past the ball to Puncheon. Really good, lovely counter-attacking move. And obviously he had a shot right from just inside the box. Obviously Mignolet saved. So actually, last weekend you would never have seen him have a chance like that because he was playing so deep. In this game, because he was playing slightly further forward, he was able to do that, and obviously that he made Mignolet make a really good save. But much like Luka, towards the end of the game, he was losing his influence, what he had in the first half, and obviously he got taken off for McArthur just after Mane's goal. So he's not getting taken off because he's for blame for the goal, he's just getting taken off just for a little bit more energy. And certainly, I'll talk about McArthur later, but McArthur did sort of give us an injection of energy into the side. But once again, just to sort of sum up his performance, he did look like he struggled. He weren't as good as we've known he can be, but still he tried to put in effort. So unlike last week where someone like Wilfried Zaha wasn't fantastic but they tried to put in effort, and I said that Puncheon did all right but didn't try to put in effort. In this game, yes, he struggled to get into the game and have chances and have influence, but at least he actually put the effort in. And you know, you want to look at his effort. He obviously got rewarded with that shot in the first half, and unluckily for us, it got saved by the keeper. But Jason Puncheon, a 6, I think is a fair result. Obviously, moving on now to the left wing back, Patrick Van Aanholt, who I'm going to give a 6. A fresh air kick at the back post went unpunished. Did well to stick out a toe and poke the ball away from Mane as he raced into the box. It was a game where he spent most of the time on the back foot rather than going forward, replaced by Jeffrey Schlupp later on. So obviously Patrick Van Aanholt here, I've given him a 6, and I think much like Joe Ward playing on the other flank, he didn't have a fantastic game, but he's still done what he had to do in that role. And certainly I think if you look at the position of a wing back, Patrick Van Aanholt is much more fitted to a wing back role than Joe Ward is, and that's because Patrick Van Aanholt's got the pace to do so, and he certainly showed in this game in glimpses why the pace could be at an advantage. But just to talk about what he'd done in the first half, so there was a ball coming into the box, which he air kicked it, obviously, and it went somewhere in the box. I can't remember exactly, but you know, put us under pressure. But that went unpunished. So the fact that he made a mistake, but luckily for us, it didn't go punished. But then after that, you know, like I said, Liverpool were putting balls in from the wings. And certainly Patrick Van Aanholt, much like Scott Dan, was putting his foot out, putting his toe out to obviously poke the ball away. And, you know, the clear example of that is Mane's got so much pace. He was burning pace down the wing. Patrick Van Aanholt, because he's also got pace, was able to race by him, put his toe out and poke the ball out to stop Mane from going through on goal. So if you use that sort of tackle, that sort of block as an example, he done what a wing back should really be doing in the game. But because we were playing quite deep, and it was almost as if we were playing sort of a 5 at the back rather than a 3 at the back, because we were playing so deep and so sort of tight and solid, it meant that he was sort of on the back foot in this game. So rather than him going forward like he normally likes to do, putting crosses in the box, he was more staying back, keeping quite tight to the centre backs, and that's what he was doing. He was on the back foot rather than going forward, and I don't necessarily think that's bad, but I think if you've got, obviously you need to keep solid because you've got a really good team like Liverpool, but if you've got an attacking asset like Patrick Van Aanholt and you're missing someone like Zaha, surely it makes more sense for you to go forward and at least try and get something from the game and try and get involved in the counter-attacks rather than trying to be really, really so solid that you can't have any counter-attacking opportunities. And obviously, much like Jason Puncheon, much like Milivojevic, he got taken off in the second half, or Jeffrey Schlupp, and that was only just to sort of inject a little bit more pace into the side. And, you know, I said this already, I've mentioned it, you know, the Ipswich game, I think that Jeffrey Schlupp will probably play this game, and it will give Frank de Boer sort of a choice, seeing how well Schlupp plays. It will give him a choice whether to play Van Aanholt against Swansea or to play Schlupp. But like I said, really, I've given him a 6 because it was a really good showing from the pacey defender, like I've already mentioned. He did look comfortable going forward, but because he was playing so deep and he was on the back foot, he didn't really get as many opportunities going forward as he would have liked. Now to move on to our front three, starting with Ruben Loftus-Cheek, who I'm going to give a 9. Another brilliant performance from the Chelsea loanee. Put himself about and wasn't afraid to get stuck in, winning the ball back plenty of times, although he seemed to be pushed back further and further into midfield when he was supposed to be playing as part of the front three. Did brilliantly to wiggle free and create a chance for Benteke in the second half, but the big man should have really converted. So obviously Ruben Loftus-Cheek here is only his second competitive game for Palace, and I've given him a 9. It was a man of the match performance from him, and another brilliant performance. And considering he's on loan from Chelsea, you would expect that Chelsea are looking at him now thinking maybe we need to recall him, or maybe when his loan ends we need to play him in the first team, because based on this performance he showed once again how good of a class player he is. And if you talk about his performance, he put himself about a bit. So even though he was meant to be playing as part of the front three, he was putting himself about, getting involved in the midfield, making tackles, he wasn't afraid to get stuck in, so he wasn't afraid to track back and defend whilst we were under pressure. He won the ball back plenty of times, so much like Luka, where he made a lovely crunching tackle, got the ball and sort of tried to do something with it. Ruben Loftus-Cheek done the same again, won the ball back, tried to go forward, and although it seemed that he was being pushed back, because obviously as the game went on we had to play five at the back, because obviously that sort of had to try and stop the Liverpool attack. Because we were doing that and we were playing the players in the midfield, we were sort of bulking up the midfield to stop Liverpool getting through. It meant that Loftus-Cheek, rather than playing in an advanced role where he had the freedom to go forward and attack, he was playing quite deep. And although he's been meant to be playing as the front three, because we were had so much pressure being put on us, he obviously had to go back into the midfield, and that certainly, I think, didn't really affect his performance, because by him going back it sort of meant that we went to a 3-5-2. So instead of him playing as a front three, he played in the midfield, where he can pick up the ball from deep and create stuff forward. And then obviously we saw that in the second half where he moved, we saw it in the second half, so where he moved into the midfield, so into that sort of that midfield 3 or midfield 5, whichever way you look at the formation. When he moved back into that role, he could pick up the ball from deep, run forward and try and create something for obviously the striker Christian Benteke, and he did do that in this game. Ran to the byline, managed to wriggle past 2 or 3 Liverpool defenders, put the chance on the plate for Benteke. Benteke pointed where he wanted the ball, Loftus-Cheek put it exactly where Benteke wanted it, and obviously Benteke hit it over. And if you look back at the replays of Benteke, people may criticise Benteke for missing that and saying you should really be scoring that, but if you look back at the replay, as Benteke's gone to hit it, it's hit his shin and it's gone up. So it's not like he's completely mishit it, it's the fact that he's misplaced the kick and it's hit him on his shin. But if he had scored that, there would have been more credit gone to Loftus-Cheek, because he's the one who created that opportunity. But I've said this against Huddersfield, he was good on the ball once again. He was always looking for options, so whether he was playing up front and he was looking for Benteke, whether he was playing in the deep midfield looking to get the ball to Townsend, to Benteke, to someone like Punchin, he was always looking for different options. He's really strong, he's really physical, and that's something that obviously Frank de Boer said when he joined the club that we needed someone with a little bit more presence, who was young, who has got that determination to go. And certainly Loftus-Cheek brought that to us. His defensive role was fantastic, tracking back and going forward he was really good as well. And if you look back at the replay, it was actually brilliant the way how he got past 2-3 Liverpool players to manage to put the ball on the plate for Benteke, and Benteke really should have scored. And if we lost the game, if he had scored that we probably would have gone on to win the game maybe. But if you look back at the game, yes, it's unlucky and it's really quite frustrating that he missed a chance, but the fact that we're able to create chances like that now is an improvement on the game against Huddersfield. But I've said this already, he's obviously on loan from Chelsea, so Chelsea are probably looking at him thinking, okay, Palace are developing really well, he's playing really well. But he's impressed us in both games he's played this season, and he finally looks like a player that we've loaned from Chelsea. If you look back at the loans we've got from Chelsea, Patrick Bamford was absolutely rubbish. If you look at Loic Remy last year, Remy tried to play well, but he was always injured. So Loftus-Cheek is looking like the first signing we've actually got on loan from Chelsea, who may actually work out really well for us and won't be injured or just be really bad like Bamford. So like I've said already, he's been what we wanted him. We've seen him play in the European Championships with England. He played really, really well for them, scored loads of goals from them, and he's bringing that to Palace now. Like I said, he's really good on the ball, he's being really strong, he's been that physical presence, and that's something we were missing last year. But like I've said, I can't highlight this enough. The fact that he was able to do all that superb trickery work to get to the byline and get the ball to Benteke is just showing that how he can create opportunities for us going forward. And I think maybe he might, I don't think he's cup tied, so he may be able to play against Ipswich. But even if he doesn't, you know, when we play against Swansea, if he has a similar performance again where he's chopping in, changing from midfield to the attack, getting the ball from deep, running alongside Benteke, if he keeps doing that and creating chances, then somewhere along the line it's going to work for us and Benteke is going to score, because if you create opportunities for Benteke, he will score. So the more we do it, the more chances they would get. But a 9 from Loftus-Cheek, another outstanding performance. Obviously, moving on to Andros Townsend now, who I am going to give a 6. A quiet half from Andros down the left. He tried hard but really couldn't come off anything today. So obviously Andros Townsend here, I've given him a 6, and much like, you know, the game against Huddersfield, yes, he came on and made an impact, but he didn't really have a really big impact like, say, he had last season. And we've seen that in pre-season where he's not necessarily having a lot of impact, but that was because he was playing as a right wing back. But now he's playing as a forward because Frank de Boer, for some reason, decided to play Ward at right wing back. He's not feeling as comfortable as he would have liked as he was last season. And I personally think, looking at where Andros Townsend is playing, it was almost like we were playing a 3-5-2, so playing Benteke and Townsend up front. And, you know, Townsend's this sort of typical winger who likes to go out wide and cross the ball in. And when he was playing at right wing back, he could do that really well because he was on the right hand side. He could run down the flank and cross the ball in. But when he's playing as a right forward, he doesn't get the chance to do that because he has to play narrow next to Benteke. And I think that really affected his game, and that's why he was so quiet from the game. So obviously, he always has the effort. He tried hard to really get something from the game, but nothing really came off for him today. You know, he was in and out of the game, and that's the phrase I used to describe his performance. He was, parts of it was like, okay, he's starting up a counter-attack, that's good. And in other parts, he was completely out of the game, had no impact whatsoever. And I've said this already, I think the fact that Wilfried Zaha's not there, it sort of made a real impact on the way he plays in the game, because obviously Wilfried Zaha is a massive influence on the game, and playing alongside him could improve his overall performance. But overall, you know, a slightly disappointing quiet game from Andros Townsend, but he still continued to do the hard work. And the thing I must mention is, you know, if we bring in someone like Munir, or we bring in Oliver Burke, and when Zaha gets fit, we need to play Andros Townsend at right wing back, because he's a sort of winger who, not like Zaha where he's got the physical presence, he's a winger who likes to put the ball in from the wing. So if we play him as a right wing back, because he's got good defensive work, he has the chances to go out wide and cross balls in. We should be playing him there and then playing Zaha and, say, Oliver Burke up front. But certainly a 6 from him, I think, is a fair result. Obviously, moving on now to Christian Benteke, who I'm going to give a 6. Had to wait until the second half for his first chance, but he blazed it over after some good work from Loftus-Cheek. That was really his only chance of the game. So obviously Christian Benteke here, I've given him a 6, and much like Townsend, it was quite a quiet game from him, and quite a disappointing performance considering, like I said, when he had that magnificent chance from Loftus-Cheek. But if you look at the game as a whole, someone like Luka Milivojevic, Jason Puncheon, they were really good in the first half, but unlike them, Christian Benteke was really quiet, didn't really have any chances in the first half, and in the second half he was much better. And when I say much better, I mean that he had more chances, he took more chances. But obviously the thing in the second half, there's nothing we talk about in the first half, but in the second half, the first chance he had, he blazed it over. So there was really good work from Loftus-Cheek, like I said already, get past a few plays, get the ball in. Benteke pointed exactly where he wanted it on the ground. It went exactly there. And like I said, it hit Benteke. Obviously, as he's hit the ball to him, it's gone to the right place, but it bounced. And Benteke, obviously, with a player coming in from the side, or was right by him, he couldn't really hit it with his foot. He ended up hitting his shin and it went over. So, yes, he should have been taking that chance even better. But at the spur of the moment, when the balls come to you, there's players around you, and obviously the ball's bouncing, obviously unluckily for us, it hit his shin, and that was his really only chance of the game. So I haven't given him a 5, let's say, because of he wasn't in the game. I've given him a 6 because it's the benefit of the doubt. He had a few chances, but really he was quite quiet throughout the game. And, you know, the reason he was so quiet, say in the first half, is because he was so isolated. Yes, he won a few free kicks, you know, by getting pushed over, and he should have really opened the scoring when obviously he had that chance to to put us ahead. But really, that's the main thing really. If he's isolated and you don't get balls from him, someone like Townsend who could play at right wing back, if you don't get balls to Christian Benteke, then he won't have chances in the game to obviously scoring chances. And I've said this already, yes, he can win free kicks from his physicality, yes, he can head the ball, but if you don't give him that chance and you don't supply him with balls and you don't make sure there's players around him so he isn't isolated, then of course he's not going to have the chance to get something from the game. But he needs to be more clinical. We've seen how good he is with his headers. We've seen how good he can be, sort of being a poacher, coming late into the box. But what we need to see now is when you get a chance like that one from Ruben Loftus-Cheek, he needs to continue to stay composed and obviously be clinical. But like I said already, playing against his former club, I think a 6 is a fair result. Obviously, just to go quickly just over the substitutes, James McArthur, Solly Kaikai and Jeffrey Schlupp. I'm going to give all of them 6s because I think they didn't have any real impact on the game, but they still came on the pitch and added a little bit more energy. So James McArthur obviously came on for punching literally immediately after Mane scored his goal, and he slotted into the midfield. It was really good to see him back from injury. He scored for the under-23s the other day, and he's shown that he's back on the mend. He's getting back from his injury, and he sort of provided the box-to-box runner for the latter stages of the game. So obviously Punchin was playing quite far forward in the game, brung James McArthur on. McArthur has his energy, had that determination to get something from the game, and played that box-to-box sort of midfield role really well. Solly Kaikai, it was great to see him come on the pitch. He came on for Milivojevic. Obviously that meant that Loftus-Cheek moved back into midfield and Solly Kaikai moved up front sort of alongside Benteke. He done that really well. He played really well, made some lovely runs, had loads of crossing opportunities which he took. And that's the thing I mentioned with Townsend. If Townsend's playing so narrow, he doesn't have the chance to cross. But if he plays like Solly Kaikai was allowed to play in the second half by going out wide and putting crosses in, then certainly chances for Benteke will come. But Solly Kaikai came on the pitch, other than his crosses, he had a really decent drive from distance, had a shot, it was well saved by Mignolet. And considering he was only on the pitch for quite a short time, he really did impress. So I'm hoping to see more of him this season, because he is now 21 and it's beyond the cut-off date. So it means if he does play for Palace this season and not go out on loan, it means that he'll have to be in the 25-man squad. But if he does stay in 25-man squad and plays for us this season, then based on this performance, this little cameo, there are good things to come. And I've said this already, the game against Ipswich tonight, I can certainly see Solly Kaikai playing a part in it. And then Jeffrey Schlupp as well, like I said, I gave him a 6. He came on for Van Aanholt, didn't really have any real impact on the game. It was just to give a little bit more fresh legs, so while we search for the equaliser, just a little bit more pace, a little bit more fresh legs. But I've given him a 6 because nothing really came out of it. But just to talk about the game as a summary, I've just written a few bullet points. So the reaction from the Palace players was exactly what the fans had hoped for, and that has been quite different. That could have been quite different if Christian Benteke had taken his excellent chance when it came his way. So the fact that the players, after that disappointing Huddersfield result, the fact that they reacted to it and tried to do something about it by being more solid, being more defensively aware, by making changes to make them more solid, that's obviously a good thing. And, we would have been even more happy if Benteke had taken his chance. And obviously, yes, we looked so much more solid, so much more organised in the game against Huddersfield last week. It's still a little bit frustrating because there's still a little bit of work to do, because for long parts of the game, Liverpool had all the possession, had all of the control of the game. So we still need a little bit more work to be done to make sure we're not frustrated because we don't have the ball. Because for long periods in the game, it was a performance that Liverpool dominated, but it's certainly something that De Boer will be happy about. He'll be happy with the fact that we kept Liverpool at bay for 73 minutes. He'll be happy with the fact that we were defensively solid, other than the unlucky goal we conceded. And it's something to build on. The fact that we've hit a real-time low against Huddersfield, and the only way is up. So we've seen that game against Huddersfield. We know what we need to do now to improve. And now, because we've seen an improvement against Liverpool, Frank de Boer in training and against Ipswich will continue to improve the team more and more. So hopefully there's more to come this season. So now let's move on to my man of the match award. But before that, I give you my man of the match and who I thought had the biggest influence on the game. I'm now going to give you the 4 nominations and obviously the Twitter results from the Twitter poll I ran. So the 4 nominations I had this week for the man of the match award were Wayne Hennessy, Scott Dann, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Timothy Fosu-Mensah. So obviously we did lose the game 1-0, but I thought that these players, considering the parts of the games where we played, or the part of the game where we played well, these players certainly had a big part to do with it. So just to go through the results of the Twitter poll, in last place with 7% of the votes was Scott Dann, closely followed up with 10% of the votes in third place with Timothy Fosu-Mensah, which means the runner-up in this week's man of the match poll was Wayne Hennessy with 39% of the votes, and obviously the winner in first place with 44% of the votes was Ruben Loftus-Cheek. So congratulations, Ruben. You don't get a trophy or a certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on, for the second week in a row, what was a very solid performance from you. But just to go through quickly why I put these players on the shortlist, obviously Wayne Hennessy is quite clear. I gave him an 8 in the player ratings. He made save after saving the game to keep us in the game, and yes, he had a flap towards the beginning, but after that he learnt from his mistakes and was solid throughout. Scott Dann, playing in the centre of the back three, played really well, making tackles, making blocks everywhere, you know, putting headers to clear the danger, so he played really well defensively. Ruben Loftus-Cheek as well, whether he was playing defensive or offensive, when he was playing in the midfield he'd make a tackle, pick up the ball and try and create going forward. If he was playing up front, he'd try and receive the ball, try and create chances, and obviously notably the one for Benteke where he dribbled past players to get into the box. So because he'd done that, and because he had such a big influence on the game, and because I gave him a 9, he's on the shortlist. And the same goes for Timothy Fosu-Mensah, much like Scott Dann, making tackles to keep us in the game, making blocks, and also just trying to be solid throughout the game. And considering at times we were playing with a back 5, out of the 5 players at the back, Scott Dann and Timothy Fosu-Mensah were certainly the main players playing there. But really, I think for me, you know, I'm going to pick my man of the match, but I think I have to go with the Twitter poll. So congratulations, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. You don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my man of the match. And the reason I did vote for him is the influence he had in the game. The fact that when he was going forward, he'd pick up the ball, he'd drive forward, dribble past players, and the fact that when he was defensive, he'd make a tackle and then carry the ball forward. So the whole impact he had on the game is obviously why I've given Ruben Loftus-Cheek the man of the match award. But now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got an exclusive interview with Frank de Boer, Timothy Fosu-Mensah and Jason Puncheon after the game.
He's so close to getting something from the game today. Would you say the team deserved a point at least?
Yeah, I think so. I think we stuck well to the game plan. But unfortunately, in the scrimmage, they scored a goal and we had a loss.
Aside from that goal, are you pleased how the team gelled today defensively?
Yeah, I think we did well. We were very compact. We break them up very well. I think the team did well, and it's painful to concede a goal like this.
They've got a very dangerous attack, and felt like they kept sending on more and more attackers. What was it like in that battle, that part of the pitch?
Yeah, obviously it's hard, but this is Premier League, so this is what you expect to have a tough game, and especially away against Liverpool. It's going to be hard, but I think the team showed great spirit, and that's what the boss said as well. We showed great spirit, and we have to keep building on this.
And was it important after last week's result to put an improved performance today?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was very important. What happened last week was last week, and we check step by step, we check game by game, and we go again.
The man behind you today, Wayne Hennessy, had a great game, made quite a lot of saves.
Yeah, I think he did very well today, you know, talking from the back as well. And I think he had a very good game.
And you've played 2 games. What's it been like for you settling in?
I felt home straight away the first day, you know. The place made me feel home. Everyone wants to help, so it's a warm club. I felt good.
Jason, obviously a disappointing result, but in terms of performance, was that a better effort this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I thought it was a lot more compact. You know, I thought it was in the game for a large period, obviously, until the goal. You know, it's obviously disappointing, but we look forward to next week now.
What was the game plan when you came here this afternoon?
Just to stay compact, you know, make it difficult for them. And I thought we did really do that. I thought obviously the game opened up a bit more second half, where they had obviously more chances. You know, I think Wayne's kept us in it at times. You know, but I thought we'd done that really up until the goal.
It's a sort of transitional period for you, the players, because you've had the styles of previous managers, now the style of Frank de Boer. Is it going to take some patience and time to work through that?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got to believe in it. I think we've done that in pre-season. I think we showed that a period of time today when we played some good football to get us in some good situations. But we've got to forget about it now and look to the next game.
You've got a couple of home games coming up, one in the Cup and one in the League next. How important is it just to get a win under your belt?
Yeah, Tuesday is definitely important for us, for what we're trying to do and where we're trying to head towards, but then obviously we still got Swansea in the back of our mind.
And despite the setback, can you take confidence from this today?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've got to take a lot of confidence, for the compactness, the way what we wanted and the game plan, and I thought we stuck to that.
Frank, can we get your thoughts on what was a very narrow defeat today?
Yeah, I think we fight, of the whole team, fight for a very good result, of course. If it's a draw or win, if both sides could have happened at the end. But at the end, we are standing with empty hands. But for me, the positive thing that I saw really a team who played really disciplined and really solid, and played concentrated like 95 minutes, and I think that's a fantastic starting point. And I'm convinced if we play with this discipline and this energy and this kind of spirit, we're gonna win games that I'm convinced of.
Couple of good chances. One in the first half from punching came from a lovely counter-attack. Are you really pleased with the way we played on the counter?
Yeah, of course. We really had that plan, of course. To not make it the pitch as big, that normally Liverpool wants, because they are very strong in transition, especially when you lose it at the halfway line, and then with the quick players that they are so dangerous. So we wanted to make it really tight for them, and wait for our chances. And we had one really good chance, of course, with Christian Benteke in the second half, but also with the counter-attack, what you mentioned, was a great example of that.
Yeah, Ruben Loftus-Cheek created that chance for Benteke. How important is he for us with our transitions?
Yeah, he can, with his physical and technical abilities, he can lose some players of the opponent, and then you create something. And he did it the first chance also for punching, and the second chance he also created by himself. So yeah, he's very important for us.
Fought till the very end, had Scott down up front at the end. Is that something that you work on in training for those situations?
Yeah, we already trained it one time, so if we are down or we are not satisfied with a draw and we want to force something, then this can be a solution. And you saw that a lot of players were tired, of course. You wonder really that normally Scott again will not had it in one time so the second ball is the most important thing. So we have to understand when we play the ball, the whole team has to be supported for Christian or for Scott, and that we can do better. But still, there was some small chances. This good shot. I think it wasn't a foul also with Christian, but still, this is an idea where if you want to force something.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Frank de Boer, Timothy Fosu-Mensah and Jason Puncheon had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Liverpool. But make sure to come back next week for my post-match review of the game against Ipswich Town. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.